Right now, your brain is deciding which of this week's memories to keep and which to delete. You felt it the last time you tried to learn something new, a skill, a language, a system at work. It went in slower than it used to, and by the next morning, half of it was gone. It's easy to read that as decline, as proof that the sharp version of you is behind you now. But that's not what's happening. Your brain isn't running down. It's running a selection process, constantly building new connections and pruning the ones it decides you don't need. The question that decides how sharp you stay isn't whether your brain can still rebuild itself, it's whether you're giving it a reason to. Think about the last thing you genuinely tried to master. Maybe you started a course and quietly let it lapse. Maybe you read something that felt important, and a week later you couldn't reconstruct the core idea if someone asked. Maybe you sat in a meeting where a name or a number slipped away the second you needed it, and underneath all of it a low-grade worry, it didn't used to be this hard. Here's what almost nobody tells you. That feeling is real, but the conclusion you draw from it is usually wrong. The slowdown you notice isn't your brain losing the ability to change. In most adults, that ability never switches off. What changes is how often the brain gets the specific signal that tells it to build, and modern life is almost perfectly designed to stop sending that signal. Your brain runs on a simple, ruthless rule: use it or lose it. Every connection between your neurons, every synapse is competing for resources. The ones you fire repeatedly get reinforced. The ones you ignore get marked for removal in a process called synaptic pruning. This isn't damage, it's housekeeping. A brain that kept every connection it ever made would be slow, noisy, and useless. The problem is what counts as use today. Scrolling, skimming, reacting, switching tabs, that's activity, but it's not the kind of effort that signals build something new here. It's the cognitive equivalent of pacing. You feel busy and tired, but you haven't asked your brain to construct anything. So the building signal stays quiet. The pruning continues, and over months and years, the gap between I'm thinking all day and I'm actually getting sharper quietly widens. That gap is the thing you're feeling, not decline. A missing signal. So what actually triggers the brain to rebuild? Start with the headline mechanism. Neuroplasticity, your brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. For decades, the assumption was that the adult brain was fixed. We now know that's wrong. Adults form new synaptic connections continuously, and the hippocampus, your memory hub, appears to keep generating new neurons well into later life, though researchers still debate exactly how much. The construction crew behind this has a name: nerve growth factor, or NGF. Think of it as the brain's signal to grow, maintain, and repair its own cells. When NGF is active, neurons branch, connect, and survive. When it's scarce, the building slows. Then there's the messenger that carries learning itself: acetylcholine. It's the neurotransmitter most tightly tied to attention, memory formation, and plasticity. When you concentrate hard enough to actually learn something, acetylcholine is doing the work of laying that memory down. Here's the part that ties it together. All of this new connections, NGF, acetylcholine, depends on two things you control more than you think: a demand signal that tells the brain building is worth it, and the raw materials to do the building. Miss either one, and the most willing brain in the world has nothing to work with. 3 levers, in order of impact. 1. Force genuine difficulty. Plasticity responds to effort, not exposure. Rewatching a tutorial does nothing. Trying to reproduce it from memory and failing is the signal. Pick one hard thing, an instrument, a language, a skill that resists you, and practice in a way that's slightly uncomfortable. Discomfort is the trigger. 2. Protect the night. Consolidation, the step that moves a fragile new connection into something durable, happens largely during deep sleep. Learn all day, sleep badly, and you wake up having kept almost none of it. Sleep isn't recovery time. It's the build phase. 3. Supply the raw materials. Your brain can't manufacture acetylcholine, build membranes, or sustain NGF out of nothing. It needs specific nutrients, and this is exactly where modern diets quietly fall short. This is the kind of research Cognitive Insight Lab breaks down every single week, the mechanisms behind how your mind actually works, not the surface-level advice. If that's what you're here for, subscribing takes 2 seconds and means you won't miss the next one. So, which raw materials actually matter for rebuilding? A handful of compounds keep surfacing in the research not as miracle cures, but as the literal building blocks of plasticity. There's a mushroom, lion's mane, that stimulates nerve growth factor. In one double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, older adults with mild cognitive decline showed measurable improvement while taking it, and the human research, while still early, keeps pointing in the same direction. There's bacopa, an herb used for centuries for memory, which modern studies link to slower forgetting of newly learned information, though it works on a timeline of weeks, not days. So consistency matters, and there's acetylcholine, one of the cleanest ways to give your brain the precursor it uses to make acetylcholine, the learning neurotransmitter itself. The catch is dose and form. Most products use these names at a fraction of the amounts the research actually tested. The label says the right word, but not the right number. I dug into which formulation gets the doses honest, and put the full breakdown in the description below. Before you go, if any part of this reframed how you see your own mind, that's exactly why I make these. Your brain isn't winding down. It's waiting for a reason to build. Give it one. If this was useful, a like genuinely helps the channel reach more people who needed to hear it, and subscribing keeps you in the loop. I read every comment, so tell me, what's the one thing you've been meaning to learn? This content is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before starting any new supplement or making changes to your health routine.